I would just like to preface this video with like an apology because I'm recording in the bathroom because it's the only quiet place in my house and the fan's kind of always running. I can't really turn it off, so I'm sorry. My presentation is on misogyny in ancient Greece. According to dictionary.com, mythology is defined as a set of stories, traditions, or beliefs associated with a particular group or the history of an event, arising naturally or deliberately fostered. This definition points out a key idea of mythology, that history had a huge impact on its creation. No matter what culture's mythology you look at, there is a clear connection between culture and fable. Fables often reflect society, which creates an obvious link from society to mythology. The gender relationships portrayed in Greek mythology would not have been effective if they didn't mirror the patriarchal society that was deeply embedded in the culture. Greek mythology often portrayed women as deceitful, pessimistic, manipulative, and troublesome symbols. Through discussion of the myths of Clytemnestra, Aphrodite, and Medusa, this paper argues that the depiction of women in mythology preserved their treatment in society, as men would use these legends as instructions on how to deal with their female counterparts. The women in mythology were seen as examples of what would happen if an elite woman was given even a sliver of independence. Texts like Oeconomicus and Homer's epic poetry were used as educational tools. They had themes of the patriarchy and male domination that were extremely hard to miss. Ancient Greece was set up politically and socially to be a patriarchal society. Men were the only ones that can participate politically, socially, and in social spheres. Women were never given these rights regardless of their position in the community. Zephyrin, in his work O Economicus, provides a great example of the male-female separation when he said, "I think the God from the very beginning, designed the nature of women for the indoor work, and concerns and the nature of the man for outdoor work. For he prepared man's body and mind to be more capable of enduring cold and heat and traveling and military campaigns, and so he assigned the outdoor work to him. Because the woman was physically less capable of endurance, I think the God has evidently assigned the indoor work to her." Zephyrin explains that God, who is a male mythological entity, declared that the patriarchy was the natural order of things and the divine will of the gods. When it came to showing the importance of male power in the patriarchy, Greek mythology also showed the prominence of men's position in society. In Homer's epic, The Odyssey, Telemachus says, "So, mother, go back to your quarters, tend to your own tasks, the distaff and the loom, and keep the women working hard as well. As for giving orders, men will see to that. But most of all, I hold the reins of power in this house." Telemachus displays power over his own mother by telling her to leave all military actions to him, while she go do things that were commonly more feminine. This quote shows that Greek men believed that women were so far below him that even the son had more authority than his mother. As we will see later on, most Greek myths portrayed women as irrational, aggressive, shameful, manipulative, and a plague to men, thus making the patriarchy necessary to keep women from fragmenting society. The myths that we will look at show that these women have a lot of these characteristics. For example, Clytemnestra is portrayed as aggressive and irrational because she killed her husband. Aphrodite is seen as manipulative and disgraceful because she flaunts her sexuality in a way that would be considered a prostitute if she wasn't a goddess. Medusa was seen as merciless and cold-hearted because of how she acted towards men after she was cursed by Athena. With these myths, it is no wonder that men who could afford it, mostly noblemen, kept their women in seclusion, as these myths were vividly outlined what would happen if the women were able to make their own decisions. The patriarchy was not only evident in mythology and philosophical literature, it was also prevalent in the inner workings of the rest of society. Playwrights, for example, would often have women in their plays, but female actors were never allowed on the stage. Instead, men in masks would play women. Since these plays were only performed for men and were played by men, both the audience and the actors contributed to the rigid patriarchy that was popular in ancient Greece. In the play Agamemnon, Clytemnestra is portrayed as aggressive and irrational. Clytemnestra was the queen of Argos, and the ruler while her husband Agamemnon was fighting in the Trojan War. Clytemnestra murdered her husband to defend the death of his daughter, Iphigenia, whom Agamemnon sacrificed to ensure his fleet's safe travel to Troy. Agamemnon has Iphigenia killed solely for power and respect. The power was so important to them that he had his daughter killed to appease Artemis, instead of having someone else lead the troops into battle. The chorus emphasizes this when they say he had no reaction to his daughter's screams. Once trapped, she wept and called on her father's name, as if Iphigenia's maidenish screams could move his crew of genocidal files, his entourage of death squads, or move him. When Agamemnon returned from the Trojan War, he didn't come alone. Agamemnon brought back a concubine, a prophetess named Cassandra. This caused Clytemnestra to snap and kill him. The chorus also makes Clytemnestra out to be irrational throughout the whole play, saying things like childish to cheer triumphant, then drop down deflated if the news turns to defeat. For tongues to wag with intelligence and incompetence is natural when a woman wears the crown. A woman's etiquette quickly echoes round, yet before you can describe it self-deletes. But can we really see her acting irrationally? Although it is evil, her plan required a precision and careful, rational planning. In the play, the readers will see her meticulously make sacrifices to all the gods so that her plan is successful. Ecclesiastes writes, "For all the gods in the city knows, heaven gods or underworld, for mystery gods to market idols, every altar blazes with a burning offering bright." She also strategically draws out Agamemnon's hubris by accusing him of being afraid to walk across the purple carpet that was only meant for the gods. Agamemnon says, "These things are honors for the gods, not men. The man who walks along the soil, silken gear, a fool does this, a twice fool with no fear. I am no god." But yet he walks across the purple carpet, sealing his fate. Mortal women like Clytemnestra weren't the only ones that were affected by the patriarchy. Aphrodite, the immortal daughter of Zeus, was often portrayed as manipulative, deceitful, and scheming. The Greek poetess Sappho describes the goddess in her poem Rich Thorn Immortal Aphrodite as the scheming father of Zeus. Aphrodite possessed the overwhelming power of human sexual attraction. She could win the hearts of both men and women, as she was known as the goddess of beauty, sexual love, and erotic appeal. She displays these three traits by flaunting her sexuality in a way that proves that she wasn't the obedient, pure, elite woman that the ancient Greek men would have approved of. Aphrodite represented what men of this time period feared: an independent, sensual, promiscuous woman that had affairs, even though she swore as she touched the head of her father Zeus, the Aegis bearer, that she would be a virgin for all days to come. An example of one of her affairs is depicted in the Homeric hymn to Aphrodite. Zeus was reportedly angry that Aphrodite made all of the gods, including himself, fall in love with mortals and make fools of themselves by pursuing him. So as a punishment, he makes her fall in love with a mortal named Aeneas. Zeus's action of casting sweet desire onto his daughter was to prove that she didn't hold all power regarding love, and that he was more willing to exercise that power to prove his dominance over her. After she was struck with desire for Aeneas, Aphrodite went down to Troy and prepared to seduce him. Aphrodite, looking like an unwed maiden in the size and length, when Aeneas saw her, he was filled with wonder as he took notes of her appearance and size of length and splendid clothes. Homer made sure to include Aphrodite's choice of height to show her deceitfulness, because her height was meant to make her seem non-threatening. Sappho explains that Aphrodite comes disguised as to not want her godhead and divinity to scare Aeneas. She even goes as far as to lie to Aeneas when he asked her what goddess she was. She instinctually lies and states, "Aeneas, most glorious of earthborn men, I am no goddess." Her deceitfulness in these lines show that she did not want Aeneas to know who she was, because if he did, he wouldn't sleep with her. When Aeneas finds out, he exclaims, "Now I appeal to you by touching your knee. In the name of Zeus, holder of Aegis, don't let me become disabled. Don't let me live among the human. Don't let me live like that among humans." The lies and manipulation caused Aeneas to lose his manhood, and the fact that they came from a goddess's desires just added to the grief, and it proved the consequences of giving in to a woman's demands. Medusa is described as merciless and a cold-hearted monster after she is cursed for breaking her vow of celibacy. Medusa was a beautiful maiden and a vowed priestess of Athena, the virgin goddess of wisdom and battle. A requirement to be a priestess of Athena was that the young woman must be a virgin and give her life to the goddess. And that's exactly what Medusa did. Poseidon, the god of the sea, and Athena's rival, saw Medusa and decided that she would be used to humiliate Athena. Poseidon raped Medusa on the steps of Athena's temple, and after he was done, he left Medusa laying on the steps and vanished. Medusa then prayed to Athena for guidance and forgiveness, but all she received was Athena's wrath. Instead of doing the unthinkable and punishing a male god, Athena turned Medusa into a monster and banished her into an island far away from anyone else. On this island, Medusa had no choice but to become merciless, because the only type of human interaction she would receive was men who come to kill her. Medusa would look at these men in fear, and she would turn them into stone. Years later, a man named Perseus came, armed with a shield from Athena, Hermes' flying sandals, and a sword from Zeus. He then killed Medusa and cut off her head to stop his mother from marrying a cruel man. He then gave Medusa's head to Athena, who made it into a shield, and she was forced to protect the goddess that slut-shamed her and turned her into a monster. The cultural portrayal of women is both a representation of and an influence on the treatment and place of Greek women within society. Women were never seen as equals, even if they had a comparable status. In fact, women who are in positions of power today are still not viewed as equals. For example, in 2016, when Hillary Clinton became the Democratic nominee for the presidential election, it provoked a wave of misogyny. Pictures of Clinton depicting her as Medusa and her competitor Donald Trump as Perseus. Clinton's sanity was constantly attacked, with accusations of brain damage and that she had suffered from a concussion. Much like the men of ancient Greece, men in America were feared being emasculated by a woman in power. The way that women in ancient Greek society was due to the lessons that were embedded in the literature of this time period. Xenophanes' Economicus clearly states that the desire to seclude elite women for the benefit of male members in the Greek household, it made the impersonal treatment of women necessary to mold the perfect wife and keep men in charge. In fact, the stories written above are written by men and performed by men in plays that men were only required to attend. The amount of control that men, especially the wealthy elite men, had over the female population is astounding. It is clear that women were seen as a necessary evil, filled with characteristics that required domination. Oeconomicus, as well as aspects from Hesiod and Homer's epic poetry, were used to enforce the seclusion of women, and structural literature drew upon the negative aspects of women like Clytemnestra, Aphrodite, and Medusa to show how a woman's independence could lead to disaster.